But what do IRBs ask for? Since I'm your IRB for this class, you're going to need to know what types of things I need to know from you to make sure that your studies are going to be appropriately ethical. IRBs in general ask for the purpose, your hypotheses, and the background literature to make sure that you're not just wasting your time on a study, that there's a good reason for you to take participants' time and conduct the study that you want to conduct. They need to know all of your data collection tools in detail. They would need to see every survey item that you gave participants or every way that you plan to measure anything from them. You would need to also explain the sequence of data collection procedures. You also need to plan your statistics ahead of time to make sure that you have the right number of participants for the analyses that you want to do. And you especially need to tell them the ways that you're going to protect participants. So that could be their privacy, protecting them from data breaches, or other benefits and risks as well. So a person applying to the IRB needs to explain how their research is minimal risk, or if it's not minimal risk, how they're going to still reduce the risks as much as possible. And then also any benefits to the individual or benefits to society at large that could be gained from this research having been conducted. Now, you, again, are not going to have to apply to an IRB, and not all of these items apply to both of your study types. So at the end of this lecture, I'm going to clarify which of these things that we talked about you have to worry about for your observational study and which of them you're going to have to tell me for your survey research study. We have an online system called Cayuse that we use with the UT Tyler IRB, and it asks researchers a lot of different questions. You can see on this navigation bar on the left, there's information about the contact info of the researchers, the study design, the purpose and hypotheses, the people you're recruiting for your study, the data collection procedures, risks and benefits. They ask you about data security, informed consent, a lot of other issues that are the types of things we're already studying from our textbook chapters. I went into the system and just created a little sample study to show you the types of questions that they ask, and just to get you thinking about how deeply researchers have to think about their research ethics and how carefully we as IRB members monitor the research that goes on at the university to make sure it's being done correctly. So in the background and significance sections early in the application, I pretended that I was investigating gender effects on mask wearing in East Texas in an observational study. And I used some citations to help build my case. I included references. And this is kind of similar to what you've already done for your hypothesis submission, right? You have already told me the purpose of your study, which was your observational research question. You've also done that for your survey research project already. Second, you have given me a hypothesis submission, which means you have now refined the purpose of that study that was broad into a specific prediction. And you've also given me at least one research article for each of those projects to explain why you predicted what you did. So this is me being the IRB at this early stage on the first few questions on that form, asking you, what is your study about, so that I can make sure you're doing it ethically. The IRB application also asks about how you recruit participants from your sample to study your population. They ask you about age and the eligibility criteria. Who would you invite and who would you not invite, and why? And they also ask about exclusion criteria, who is excluded from the study, and they very specifically ask you, are there any gender, ethnicity, race, or any other kind of protected classes intentionally excluded from your study? You should mark no on this, or if you mark yes, you need a super duper good reason. And I want you to think about which of the principles from the Belmont report this best lines up with. They also need to know not only who you're going to recruit, but how you plan to recruit them, because they want to make sure that you're not being coercive, that you're not asking people in such a way that pressures them. So they want you to explain exactly how you would approach or reach people, whether it's electronically or in person, what you would ask them, and they want to see a recruitment flyer. Now, you don't actually have to do this part for either of your studies. You don't need to give me recruitment materials, because for your observational study, you're going to be covert and not talk to people and not go up and recruit them. You're just going to be covertly watching them, right? Without them knowing that they're in a study. That is why we're making sure it's a very, very safe study and being very serious about these ethical principles. In your survey study, you also won't have to do this, but you will need to write about how you would plan to recruit participants. You're not actually going to recruit them, but there's a section of your method section in your paper, the participants part of the method section, that is going to explain how you would approach participants, what kind of incentives you would offer them too. If a researcher answers yes, there will be a monetary incentive, reviewers like myself have to go through it and make sure that it's not a very large coercive amount of money that would be pressuring participants, perhaps. You don't have this issue in either of your studies. IRBs want to know about all your data collection tools. I want to see this stuff too. For your observational project in week 5, you're going to give me your detailed data collection plan, and that is going to involve you showing me any checklist that you might use to count some of the behaviors you want to watch out in public or online with public social media posts. And for your survey research project, you are going to be writing survey questions, and I will help you develop those along the way. So I definitely will also see your data collection tools for that project. For data collection procedures, again, in week 5, you're going to be explaining that to me for your observational project, being very specific about what you plan to do, how you plan to do it, where you plan to do it. For the survey research project, there's a piece of your method section of the paper where you would talk about where and how you would collect data from participants. The sequence of going through things like informed consent, giving them the survey, giving them any reward for completing the survey, and those types of things will be included in the procedure section of the method section of your survey research paper. For both of your studies, though, we are adhering to this principle of beneficence from the Belmont report. We are going to be very careful about the risks and benefits. The IRB likes to know these types of things too. They want to know what are all the possible risks to participants other than something that they might encounter in everyday life. And so we want to make sure that your participants in your observational study are not going to encounter any greater risk than everyday life. So you don't want to be exposing them to COVID or putting them at risk of any embarrassing information coming to light or something like that. And for your survey research project, we are just going to pretend that you would get informed consent from them and that you would also make that minimal risk. So even though you're not going to have to give me this like risk benefit assessment, I'm going to be helping you develop your survey questions to make sure they're not too upsetting. In research that does qualify for human subjects research protections, which yours will not, they also require informed consent for most types of it. So the IRB wants to know, are you going to get informed consent? How are you going to do that? Are they just going to sign it, or is it going to be implied? Is there going to be any deception? Are you going to waive informed consent for your research? So y'all, for your observational research, would be waiving informed consent, meaning this is a very innocuous type of study that's not going to be harmful, and people are out in public doing things that people can see them do anyway. So it is okay that you are not asking for their permission as long as you're not filming them or anything. The IRB also asks about what statistics you plan to do, and this is to make sure that you are not wasting participants' time and that you have the appropriate number of participants to do the statistics you need to do. Y'all will be doing some statistics for your observational research projects, and I will walk you through exactly how to do that. So in your detailed data collection plan, I'm going to take that and also give you feedback about how to start planning your statistics before you even collect your data. For your survey research project, you're not going to collect any data, and thus you're not going to do any statistics with it. However, I still want you to do that statistical thinking. So what you're going to do for the survey research project is figure out statistically how many participants you would need for the type of test you would need to conduct. And I will walk you through exactly how to do that with tutorials. And then you're going to write up a little planned analyses or analytic strategies section to your survey research project. Normally, a full paper where you had actually conducted the study, you would write up a results section and say what numbers you did find. But instead, we are going to plan what kind of statistical tests we would do and how we would interpret them. That is sort of what the IRB asks for researchers to do here. And actually, me as an IRB reviewer, I tell researchers to do the same things I tell y'all to do and how to figure out how many participants you need and carefully plan your analyses. The IRB cares a lot about privacy, and we do in this class as well. They care about whether you're going to be collecting anything that has anything that could identify a participant. Their name, their birthday, their face, literally anything about them that could be used to trace who they are. If you're not collecting any of that stuff, you are doing anonymous research, which is good. That's great. It's very much easier to protect participants' privacy when you don't even know who they are in the first place and nobody else has any way of finding out who they are. Now, you can also say yes to this question and still do research. Researchers do. Instead, we want them to do confidential research. Confidential means we are collecting things about participants that could be identifiable. We do have their name or their email address somewhere, but we have to be very, very careful that we protect that data so that only we as the researchers have access to it and it doesn't leak out anywhere. Toward that end, the IRB asks stuff like, Who has access to this information? I need their names on this form. And they also ask about other things that could be involved in ethics too, like do you have any profit motive? Do you have anything to be gained by doing this research? Is there some company who's supporting you in doing it? Because that could complicate some of these privacy issues.